when you bring in a Gen 1 CDP, you can have up to 4 to 5 additional roles in your marketing organization that you never had before. And some organizations, that's still the best thing for them to do because they don't have that mature cloud data infrastructure. But if you do have it, then you can try to get back to marketing, right? And to do the things that you want to do.
I'm thrilled today to have our guest, Darren Rankine, on the show. Darren is the partner of technology at Transparent Partners. Darren, do you want to introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about what you do?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on the show today. I really appreciate the invite. Like Jason said, my name's Darren Rankine. I'm a partner at tech at Transparent Partners. And Transparent Partners empowers marketeers to excel in the data-driven world. So it's kind of a mouthful, but ultimately what it is you can't do marketing nowadays without technology and without data. And so we help our clients navigate this ridiculously complicated space. And so we do it by helping ensure that we kind of help them deliver the business goals or objectives they're doing by organizing their tech and data and also their operating model, their people and processes to ensure that they're delivering on those goals.
That's great. Yeah, and I know, especially heading into next year's, as folks look to really, tighten the ratchet around efficiency of their business, having control around the data, how the entire marketing funnel affects, lifetime value beyond just growing, top line is really top of mind for many of our listeners today. So, really just kicking things off, Darren, you and I were speaking a few weeks ago around the future of the category, and obviously as an agency focusing on core data applications, you need to ask the question around how data plays a role across the martech value chain. And what's interesting over the last several years, the martech value chain from a data perspective is actually not just a martech problem. It's really evolved into a much broader set of data considerations around advancements within cloud data infrastructure and the cloud data warehouse. So really, which brings us to our big question today, which is specifically around CDPs and data and sort of data categories within martech. How has CDP as a category evolved over the last several years? And when you're looking to set your CDP strategy and identify a CDP that's right for your business, what are some of the key considerations? So Darren, maybe you can sort of just kick off.
Yeah.
A bit of a, we can sort of dive into a bit of a history lesson. Maybe we can talk about some of the basic problems that folks see in the market when they're looking for a CDP, and then we can dive into some of the considerations and try to unpack this problem.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's a great question. So as the category, right, like CDP is just an acronym, and many vendors have kind of congregated or kind of come towards this category and had themselves certified as this acronym. But for me, it's very synonymous. The CDP acronym is synonymous with a vehicle. And it really comes down to what vehicle do you need? Is it an aircraft carrier, a canoe, a bicycle, a tricycle? Because each CDP that I've come into contact with has a genesis story, something they started out doing really well, and they've gravitated towards this space and added more capabilities. So it's super confusing for brands to decipher which CDP is the best one for them. And the way that we do that, the way we help our clients, and the number one advice to any client, any brand, is the obsession on what they're trying to accomplish. Like, what business value are they trying to drive? What are the use cases that they're trying to enable? And then the other kind of advice we'd have there is, some people have come to our company and other companies that I know of in the past and said, I want a CDP. And really, you need to kind of take a step back from that approach and say, well, what is the business objectives? What are the use cases? And then the next thing is, what are the capabilities that you need to unlock the above? And that's where the obsession really starts. The other vendors that you've seen come to this space in the last few years are like the marketing clouds, like the Salesforce and the Adobes. And I think that those platforms are going to, they're in their first generation, maybe their second generation of their platforms. And those platforms will continue to evolve, and they'll continue to be important for brands that have committed heavily into those platforms, into those marketing clouds. But they're not necessarily the right tool for other companies. And then more recently, especially with the recent publication of the Modern Marketing Data Stack reports by Snowflake, that's just opened a different kind of paradigm, right? And I think that where CDPs still work, whether you call them traditional CDPs or packaged CDPs, they still work where a brand still has a lot of siloed data. And if they've still got siloed data, CDPs can still be a great tool to pull that all together. However, if you do have a mature cloud data infrastructure, which something is now emerging in the Snowflake space and other platforms, that then unlocks a whole host of other tools and opportunities for the marketeers to use. So, yeah, that would be my kind of quick take on that question.
It makes a ton of sense. In a minute, I want to unpack the data value chain relative to what you sort of call fully bundled or packaged CDPs, and how that is sort of evolving relative to the cloud data warehouse and cloud data platforms and what's the Snowflakes and the BigQueries of the world are doing and have done. But before we go there, maybe we can just spend a few minutes talking about some of the high level business problems and marketing challenges that the CMOs and marketing organizations are trying to solve when they start looking for a CDP.
Yeah, I mean, the typical problems that we see our clients asking for is we get engaged by CMOs, and they're either new in position or they've been in that position for 18 months. And the typical problems is they either don't know what data they have, or they don't know where the data is. And if they do have the luxury of knowing where it is, it's usually in silos. And they have this ambition that they wish to be more personalized, be more relevant, be more timely, the traditional things that people want. And they just can't do it with their current stack, right? The stack is disconnected. The data is not in one place, and on top of all of that, right, they have actual business decisions that they're trying to drive, or business objectives, such as, they want to increase retention. They want to win back some lost customers. It's the usual things. I mean, marketing hasn't changed. But how you get there now and what you need to achieve those goals is based on the tech you have and the data that you have.
Yep, no, 100%. And a big thing we see in the market is really just this sort of crawl, walk, run life cycle capabilities. I think every CMO wants their team to be running and affecting highly personalized one-to-one win-back campaigns and messaging across the entire customer life cycle. But at the end of the day, the reality for so many marketing organizations is that while they have the data and some may have the engineering resources to wrangle the data, they're hamstrung in operations.
Right.
So anytime they want to make progress towards any of these strategic user-facing initiatives, operations are just incredibly slow. And really just evolving from a crawl to a walk, removing the friction around data disaggregation and bringing it into a single place in a single context at the fingertips of the folks who are operational is a step from crawl to walk. And then once you can walk, you can then actually look at test, target, iterate type of methodology, where you can actually get a lot better, a lot more quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, we kind of when we end up doing an assessment for a client, so a typical engagement for us would be to come in and assess their technology landscape, their data landscape, understand their use cases, work out where the gaps are, and then make a recommendation of how they evolve that over the next few years. And usually that first phase is the foundational phase. It's getting all that data together. And there's a lot of work and effort that takes place to do that. And that's before even the marketeers can really get their hands onto that data. Obviously, we try to iterate and do things in increments, like 3-month increments, but it's still that first phase is that foundational phase.
Great. So for any of our listeners today who are on YouTube, we're going to try something new here on the show. We're going to flash up a quick visual. I'll describe it, for anyone who's listening on Spotify or Apple or any of the other podcast distribution channels. But there's been a bit of a paradigm shift that's come by the advent of the cloud data warehouse. And Darren, maybe in a minute you can sort of speak through the visual. But at the end of the day, the problem that we're talking about here with CDP is really around what we call the data value chain. What's the life cycle of a data point from when a customer first clicks on a product listing to view it, and then that data then goes into an entirely complex set of martechs and data systems, then can eventually be used to populate an ad or an email or anything in between. So Darren, maybe if you sort of just want to talk through different phases of the data value chain, and we can talk through how, depending on where you are relative to your maturity around solving problems of the data value chain, how that influences your CDP strategy.
Sure. So let's just talk about the kind of like that generation one CDP, the fully bundled one, and how that works, right? The first thing you have to do is you have to go and identify your sources. Like, what data is out there, and what state is it in, how clean is it? And you have to ultimately, once you've identified that source, you need to bring it into these generation one CDPs. And they're really good at that. They have connectors to a lot of source systems. And then inside that CDP, you can then go to step two, which is modeling that data, putting it in a form that it can be used, go on to clean it and enrich it, and then ultimately making it available to be used. Now, one of the things that's kind of overlooked here is, if you're really after that behavioral data, not the traditional transactions coming out of CRMs, there's a lot of work to identify the event in the phase one, that data collection, the events that are coming out of the mobile app, the events that are coming out of the POS system or the website. And sometimes that data is not captured in such a way that's useful for the marketing team. So you can spend a lot of time designing and collecting that data. But once it then becomes available in the CDP, you get to this activation stage. And quite frankly, that's the stage that only the marketeers care about, right? You had to do those first few steps of data collection, data modeling, data enablement, and get into that activation stage is where the marketeer is like, finally, I can do my work, right? That's where they want to be able to create audiences. And also, ideally, if they can, they actually want to be able to orchestrate between those audiences and across different channels. And so that's the kind of like traditional flow, I would say. And really, I just made that point again, that the marketeers really only care about when they get to create audiences and create journeys and send it on to their channels. But they've had to, let's say past tense, they've had to do those first few steps because their data was siloed across the organization. And a CDP, the traditional CDPs, the Gen 1 CDPs, were a great vehicle, and still are for some clients, a great vehicle for allowing the marketers, the marketing team, to pull that data together. So that's kind of the Gen 1 track.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, if you sort of look at, I just spent Tuesday of this week at the Luma Partners Conference, in Menlo Park, where I think probably, a couple hundred martech vendors came into the conference, and we had a ton of conversations with many of our sort of fellow CDP CEOs. And it's very interesting. CDP as a category actually predates, the cloud data warehouse. A lot of the value chain here is thinking about, the realities of what the world looked like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, et cetera, when marketers just needed data pipelines and fully integrated data solutions, to actually affect a lot of the problems that that you just went through. So Darren, maybe you can sort of talk through the cloud data warehouse and cloud data platforms and how they've sort of present a different way of approaching these problems.
Yeah, the challenge you have on the first one, right, the generation one, is you've created this great platform that serves the marketing team. But the challenge is that data is now inside that CDP. And so the second generation, right, when large brands, and now it's like the medium-sized brands, are now moving to this cloud data infrastructure, they're migrating off these traditional on-prem databases into the cloud-based infrastructure. And so that's now, there is engineering to be done, right? So some team at that brand has done the data collection, the data modeling, the data enrichment. That has still been done by a team at the brand. And they've pulled it up all together, on Snowflake or other cloud platforms. And now it's available to be used, but the marketeers still need to get at it. So the conversation has changed a little bit. From the marketeer's perspective, it hasn't changed. They still want to activate the data. They used the Gen 1 CDPs in the past to do that, and they were kind of pulling the data together. Now that this maturity has happened for some brands in the third line on your diagram, where you've got the cloud data warehouse and the CDP-centric solutions, now that data is in one place and can be accessed, there's a new breed of tools that are coming out that can now connect on top of that data and leverage it for the marketeers. So it allows them to create audiences, to do journeys and federate it out to the channels that they wish to get it to. So really from the marketeers standpoint, nothing's really changed for them. It's just the engineering work up front that's happened. Either the brand has got a data analytics team or a technology team that's pulled it all together, ready for what the marketing team want to use it for. And that's always been the dream of the marketeers, right? Their goals haven't changed. They've always wanted that data in one place. Gen 1 allowed them to bring it together themselves. The Gen 2 is now that they're reliant on that mature infrastructure being created by a data analytics team or the IT team at the brand.
No, that's a great overview, Darren. And let's sort of go on to the next question. You're on the front lines here, and you see all sorts of CDP deployments. I could argue one side, which is look, it seems like having to deal with an external data dependency, as a marketer is a headache. Even if I have a mature Snowflake or BigQuery instance, as a marketer, I don't know if I really want to bother with it. Because I just want to own my destiny. I want to make sure that that the whole pipeline that I have visibility on, and that I just don't want to deal with with this enterprise data resource or this organizational data resource, which can just be a bit clunky and a bit expensive, and a headache. So maybe you can sort of talk to the sort of what you see in the market and sort of the argument against that kind of orientation, and and why, if you do have a cloud data warehouse investment, how it can potentially be, how it can and should influence your CDP strategy.
Yeah, so I think in that generation 1 model that you were just showing, the marketeers are taking on some additional burden when you go down that approach that they ideally don't want to do, right? So one of these examples will be that they're now responsible for the data quality coming into their platform, right? Because it's, Gen 1 CDPs are owned by the marketing teams traditionally. So now they're responsible for the data quality coming in. They're also responsible for the business logic that they apply to that data when they create business rules or audiences. And so what I've seen is you get like 2 broad categories of data quality issues. You get the data that's coming in could be not what you anticipated or what you expected, whether it's less volumes than you anticipated or the actual data inside the events that are coming in is not what you expected it to be. Either way, that's created by an upstream platform. So a good example would be a mobile app. A mobile app is sending real-time events to the CDP. All of a sudden, it stops sending events. Now the marketing team is responsible, the CDP operations team is responsible for chasing that down, working out why it happened, working out the impact it's now had on their audiences. And then the other one, the business logic that those marketeers or that CDP operations teams created, they're the ones that have created business rules and audiences. And so they have to kind of double check that work, have separate QA teams to make sure it's correct. So they're taking on additional tasks, quite frankly, out of necessity, right? So they've taken that on board because that data wasn't in one place. So they use the Gen 1 CDP. So the marketeers are taking on these additional tasks, whereas in the Gen 2 example that you were showing on your screen, that is the responsibility of another team, right? The data engineering team is responsible. It's still important from a brand level. You still need data quality and you still need data quality tools, but it's a transfer of ownership in the second generation to the engineering teams and freeing up the marketeers to do what they want to do, which is they want to market, they want to create audiences. So that's the one that I've seen myself firsthand and several examples. And there's a whole host of other things that then can kind of cause other things to happen there. But that's the main one when I see the ownership change of being responsible. The other thing in Gen 1 that you're responsible for is you in the CDP area, the arena, you need a data architect on your team. You need to go and understand the different sources of data. You need to go and talk to the different teams and decide which data elements that you want to bring in. Whereas when you've got that second gen, that's a task that will be owned by a data and analytics team or a data engineering team, and you become a customer of that approach and not like an actual designer, and you're actually rolled up your sleeves and getting involved, which again, the marketing teams in Gen 1, we're just doing that out of necessity. We kind of have to.
Yeah. And also I imagine, with budget cuts, thinking about, even just the operational, costs of owning that, versus a centralized approach is going to be another pressure that, will sort of push,
Yeah, let me add to that actually, because that's really important. When we help our clients pick the right tool for them, right? So whatever is the right tool, we'll help them pick it. But the other thing that we help them with is making sure that we help them design an operating model. Because when you do Gen 1, there's a number of roles that you've now essentially created inside the marketing team that literally did not exist before, right? You need, like I said, first of all, you need program management, because you need to manage all these different sources and design them and have sprints to bring that data in. Then you need a person to sit there, and IT teams are really good at this. You need a person who's going to monitor and manage that platform, right? Make sure it's running every day. Make sure all the feeds that are coming in, that none of those data feeds failed. That's a thing that marketeers don't traditionally do and don't want to do either. But having a CDP, a Gen 1 CDP, creates that role. Then you need to do continual platform testing and configuration. So now you need a testing team, like a QA team, a testing team. You need a technical expert to kind of oversee all of this. And then really the roles that the marketeers care about is that marketing business analysts. They want to see how well campaigns are doing, analyze the programs. And so, when the Gen 1 CDPs created these additional roles that marketeers traditionally didn't do. So it can be that when you bring in a Gen 1 CDP, you can have up to 4 to 5 additional roles in your marketing organization that you never had before. And some organizations, that's still the best thing for them to do, because they don't have that mature cloud data infrastructure. But if you do have it, then you can try to get back to marketing, right? And to do the things that you want to do.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, there's, a very a very fine sort of, relationship between, technology, process and strategy, and often if, you're burdened and hampered by operations, then, executing against your strategy just becomes, too complex, and you just get, hampered by the details and executing business as usual.
Yeah. I mean, just to add to that, so what happens is you become, when the CDP is implemented and you become successful, the demand increases. So then your actual operations team needs to actually increase to meet that demand. And so again, it's then, I said 4 to 5 headcount, but then it can actually be even more. And again, it's out of necessity that you have to do that in that kind of Gen 1 model. Yeah,
no, 100%. And look, I think one of the biggest challenges with martech as a category is, so many applications represent themselves as being a plug and play into whatever you're doing solution, and sort of sit somewhat in isolation of any of these your considerations across people, process, and systems. So I think the work that you're doing, transparent partners are doing is critical to help folks navigate an incredibly complex set of tools and technologies.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you have to be careful of as well in the Gen 1 is that when you are creating business logic in the CDP and audiences in the CDP, that business logic is tied in that CDP and it's not available to all the other systems. And so sometimes when you're trying to marry results from this one group that the CDP is powering and then another group in that organization, sometimes those results don't equal one another because they're using different business logic. It's again, I keep using the word necessity. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You still have, some brands still have to do it, and it's still the right tool. And I think where we're evolving to is an ecosystem. Some CDPs, rather than being the single tool that powers marketing, are going to have a role in that cloud data infrastructure, and they might play a very specific role. So it could be I don't know, identity management or the real-time streaming of event data. They might play specific roles, and it's more of it'll evolve to be more of an augmentation strategy than rather just a singular CDP, one platform to power marketing.
Yep. No, 100% agreed here, with how the category is evolving and how dependent on your data strategy, really, that needs to be the first question, to ask around what your CDP strategy, should be. So Darren, final question for you that we've introduced on the show. I think, as of the summer now, if you were to have, this conversation with anyone in the world, outside of me, who would it be and why?
So I'm gonna probably just tailor this specific to the brands that I work with. I would love to have this conversation with the CIO and the CMO and even the CEO if need be, because to make them understand that there's two trajectories to go down, right? Gen 1 or Gen 2. And if you go down Gen 1, it still might be the right thing for you to do. But the thing that I want the CIO and CMO to know is that whilst we're going down the Gen 1 routes, who is building the infrastructure to evolve us to the Gen 2 route, right? Who is building that cloud data infrastructure within their organization? Because it kind of still needs to happen. And so then 3 years down the road, after we've done the Gen 1 implementation, then we'll go more to a hybrid integration strategy. So that's the conversation I'm having with my clients. And I will continue to have at that, C-suite level to make sure that I'm helping my clients evolve to the next level, not giving them like a point solution for today. And we're always trying to keep them going on that roadmap and evolving their capabilities to deliver on their marketing value.
Yeah, no, that's sort of a great answer. At the end of the day, I think we're at a tipping point around how enterprise data strategies are used outside of data, ironically. And I think those conversations, especially as we head into next year with what seems to be a prolonged recessionary period potentially, is really going to force folks to look across the aisle, have those conversations, collaborate, and I guess align on centralized infrastructure. So totally get that. I guess sort of wrapping up the bottom of time here. I think first, Darren, thank you for coming on our podcast and sharing your wisdom with us. And really, when I take a step back around the problems we're talking about, it really all comes down, to personalization. How do you think about, affecting a data strategy that, it provides the most complete and accurate view of your customers, of the business, and allows you to optimize, key business and marketing metrics, whether that be top line growth, whether that be improvements around customer acquisition costs, extension of lifetime value, optimizing return on ad spend or conversion rates, or everything in between. Ultimately, data is the catalyst to make this all work. Yet at the same time, there's this tremendous complexity in the field of martech, and there's been tremendous growth and disruption that's affecting around cloud-enabled data infrastructure. And depending on where folks are, in their life cycle as a business, that can really drastically change the way you'll be thinking about your martech and your CDP strategy. And I think these conversations are going to be a lot more front and center as we head into the new year. So Darren, really appreciate your deep thoughts here, both at a high level strategic perspective, and also as someone who's down in the weeds. In the details, and really understands what will actually make a marketing strategy successful when it comes to implementation and operations. So Darren, for anyone who wants to learn more about transparent partners, what you do, how can they where do they go?
Yeah, happy. We have a website, transparent.partners. That's our full website address. You can go there, or you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. Just message me. I'd love to have a conversation. I'm very passionate about this area. And we want to help our clients achieve their ambition. And we do that by simplifying this really complex space, and love operating in this space and love helping our clients. So yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Great. And thank you to everyone listening to this episode of the Data Unlocked podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Simon Data, please visit us on the web at simondata.com or email us at hello@simondata.